Welcome. My name is Cindy Cornell. I'm the career coach for working professionals here at the Yale School of Management, except I'm not actually at the School of Management today. I'm at home, just like the rest of you. Today we're going to talk about networking in the age of social distancing. It's a little bit different. So I wanted to speak to you for a few moments about how it's changed, and then we'll move into some foundations for successful networking. And then we'll talk about a few resources that you have. And I've tried to today leave plenty of time for Q&A. So hopefully this can be somewhat interactive towards the end of our meeting. So first things first, how has networking changed? Networking has always been about initiating or deepening connections, seeking or providing information, sometimes learning together, sharing career and other expertise or goals with one another, seeking, making thoughtful referrals. So those are some of the kind of core elements of networking. How has it changed? It honestly hasn't. We're still doing all of those things. We are in a space of just working in different spaces with one another. You need to be willing to and open to connecting with each other and really think about being aware of and responding to people's opportunities when they come in. LinkedIn, emails, you have a lot to share, and others have needs and such as well. So be clear about what you're looking for, and hopefully the folks that you're networking with are clear as well. And terms of what you're looking to learn or what they're looking to learn in terms of information, introductions, or mentoring. I just want to check in with you. We have a poll. If Kayla, who is in our alumni relations group, would launch that. Has your networking increased, decreased, or stayed the same since we started social distancing? Kind of curious to see what your experiences have been. Glad to see that there's a lot of people who are still taking part in social or in our new kinds of networking. So still a couple coming in. It's good to see that a lot of people have kept connecting with people. For those of you that decreased, I hope that maybe this inspires you to step forward and do a little bit more. And for those of you that haven't kind of increased your networking, hopefully, again, this inspires you as well. I see one question, and I'll share this right now. In terms of the slides after the webinar is over, yes, we will be able to share those, and those will be launched up or loaded up onto the alumni relations website. And I believe you will also get an email notification when the slides are available. So anyway, so it's increased. 42% of the folks have increased their networking, which is awesome. In terms of our current reality, we're working at home with our families and our kids, and my cat Angus is just over here on the table, and I'm hoping he chooses not to kind of join me in presenting today, but he may well. We're working at home with our families during a global pandemic, and everybody else is too. So I want you to kind of just remember that. And for those of us who are social distancing, spending time with the same couple of people all day long, every day. How many of you, this is a rhetorical question, but just to think about it, how many of you would be excited to engage in adult conversation with somebody who's not living with you and that you don't work with? I think a lot of us are excited to have conversations with people outside of those with whom we work. So if you would, imagine that other people would too. So in terms of why not to network, there really are very few reasons not to network. Please don't go out there and network if you don't know what you want, if you don't have a plan, and if you don't know what you have to offer, because that's going to make for very uncomfortable conversations where people aren't able to help you. You show up, and instead of a solution and somebody that they'd like to help, you show up a little bit more like a problem, and they have to figure it out. And I don't know about you, but most of us have more problems than we know what to do with already. So you want to show up as a solution and as somebody who's going to actually accrete to people's brands. So let's look at a couple of potential interview or informational interview requests. Let's see here. Would you say yes to this? Hi, I found you on LinkedIn. There's a job in your company I'm interested in, and I hear it's better to be referred internally. Here's my resume and the job ID. Please post it ASAP. Thanks. I'm pretty sure that you wouldn't be too excited to see this, especially if it was somebody that you didn't know. Add in a really poorly presenting LinkedIn profile or non-existent. I have no idea how this person's going to show up in the world, and I probably don't want them attached to my brand. So that's kind of really important for you to think about when you're being introduced to, or your information is being shared by other people to folks that you want to connect with. You're now attached to their brand. So you have to really honor those brands and think about that impact that you have on those people's careers as well. You want to accrete to their brand and have them be excited about and praised for being connected with you. So uncertainty in the brain is a threat state. I don't know how this person is going to react. So I want to actually think about, how do I actually reduce that uncertainty and make it more compelling for people to say yes. So what do we have in common? And I want you to also think about, what would you say yes to? So let's try a different one. Hi, Cindy, we've not met yet, but I attended SOM. I see that we have a lot of connections in common. I've been researching roles at Pepsi, where you used to work, and it seems that it's a culture I would thrive in. Would you be open to having a brief conversation and answering a few questions? First of all, if any of you send me that request, I'm going to say yes, because I am your career coach. I work with our current MBA for executive students, and I work with alumni. So make an appointment with me in the career management system, and that link is on the alumni portal, and I'll share some of those links later on in the presentation. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at the questions also. It's kind of hard to double take with your responsibilities when you're doing these things. So that's something also for you guys to think about. How many things do you have going on your screens and such when you're doing these things? I want to make sure that people, it's easy to build trust with people when you give them these types of introductions. The question that I just noticed is about both slides and the recording. Yes, they will both be shared. And in terms of the agenda, I did share it kind of at the beginning. It's very high level. It is, kind of talking about our current state, which we did. We're getting into foundations for effective networking, and then we're going to have plenty of time for Q&A at the end after I share a couple of quick resources. So that is the agenda for the webinar. And getting back to this, what was good about this particular introduction here? I have a couple of things in common. We have SOM in common. They've done some research about roles at Pepsi. So I'm looking at that and saying, okay, they probably have some information. They're not just going in cold saying, hey, what do you know and who can you introduce me to? It seems like they have some smart questions that they want to ask me. And the threat state, if you will, in my brain is a little bit lower in terms of, is this going to be a productive conversation? So think about, again, what would you say yes to? What this person could have actually done that would have even turbocharged this introduction would have been to say something about somebody that they'd talked to that maybe already had conversations with me, somebody that referred them personally to me. That would have made it a little bit more, even more enticing than it is already. This email introduction or LinkedIn introduction, if you will, is your first impression with somebody. So I do want you to really think about and be thoughtful about what that first impression is and what you want them to be. I also would say that as I'm looking at this conversation and thinking about this person showing up in a prepared way, I'm probably pretty likely to say yes to a follow-on conversation if they're going off and doing a couple of things or talking to other people and then want to come back and circle back and report to me. So this is a way you can create some nice rapport, especially with people with whom you might want to create some kind of a mentor relationship with. You do need to take time to strategize. You don't just fire off that message. As the prior message talked about, The person said that they'd done some research. So what's the type of research that you want to do? We'll talk a little bit about that before you dive on to call or ask for a meeting. Think about building trust and rapport. You need to actually not just have contacts, but to activate them. You have to have a story, not just a list of skills and things that you've done in the past. We actually have to think about how do we put those skills together in a unique new way so that you can actually have an impact in the organization that you're thinking about. I want you to show up to your networking with clear intention, understanding who you are. Again, Socrates' famous statement, know thyself, is so important to networking, because then you can actually share how you might use your skills and your prior experiences and leverage them in new ways in a new organization, and understand why you might be, or be just simply checking in for somebody else's or a point of view about whether what you've learned and understand about an organization is that indeed true according to their experience. What specifically do you want to learn? Please don't ask people, kind of, who should I talk to? Show up with some idea about individuals or departments that you'd like to learn more about, and why those would be great introductions for you, in a way that people would, again, feel comfortable making those types of introductions if you're looking for them. Have a hypothesis about what you're trying to figure out and do your research. So this is kind of the scientific method a little bit. You don't know that you're going to be perfect for a job that you might be looking at, but you want to actually, kind of test your assumptions and understand what those assumptions are. Always have a reason, always have a request when you're walking into a meeting. It's not just, hey, I'd like to talk to you about such and such. A reason that I would say that is because it's a lot easier for me to say yes if I know what we're trying to get to, than if it's just some open-ended meeting. I'm trying to think of a bigger example here with that one. If you're asking for, a brief preliminary meeting, I'd like to test a couple of assumptions. Somebody's asked a question about hypothesis. Based on my research, based on reading a few job descriptions, it seems like your company, it seems like the culture might be a nice fit for me. And I'd love to, since we have these mutual connections in common, touch base with you and just see if my assumptions are correct, if they hold true. That would be a type of hypothesis that you could actually test with your potential networking conversation. In terms of the connections and the hypotheses, they need to make sense to people. You need to give them enough for them to be able to say yes to. Again, I'm more likely to say yes to a brief conversation and a little bit less likely to say yes to something where somebody doesn't appear prepared, or I don't know really where they want to go. I might have to, I have a pile of, for example, LinkedIn requests, people that want to connect with me. They're not from SOM. I'm taking a look at them. They're not from any really discernible kind of obvious connection, and there's no note. So I haven't quite figured out if I want those people to be part of my network yet, so I haven't said yes to them. If you send a LinkedIn request, for example, that says something about a webinar that you watched, or an article that you wrote, or something that you saw that I shared that you really felt was useful, and you send that request through, I say yes to those all day long. So you want to, again, really think about what is it easy for the person to say yes to. The other thing I want you to think about is, kind of what's the level of relationship? And we'll speak about that in a few minutes in terms of how and where and when you reach out to folks. At the high level, though, I want you to think about how you want them to remember you. I want you to be confident and competent and optimistic and thoughtfully curious and concerned about our current situation, right? You are actually reaching out to people during a global pandemic. So let's not gloss over that. I talked to somebody recently who said, we've been going through this for a little while, and, I just want to get back to business. That said, every single day things are going on in people's lives, and they're different and they're changing. And it's always a beautiful thing to stop and check in with people when you initially say hello. I remember some years ago, I was doing some work with a major financial organization and working with some of their key leaders. And these key leaders were relying on their teams to give great customer service to their clients all day long. And I asked a couple of questions, and it was very revealing how people responded. The first was, do you say hello to your team when you come in the morning? And people said, of course we do. And I said, okay, great. Do you ask them how they are? Again, eye rolls. Of course we do. Do you pause to hear their answers? And that's where the change happened in their demeanor. They were asking it, and it was much more rhetorical, and it was much less interactive. So if you're looking at people wanting to, kind of think about you as being somebody who's going to be caring and giving back and accreting to a brand, you want to actually show up that way and show them that that's who you are, not just ask for stuff. You could show up right now demonstrating your comfort in ambiguity, right? A lot of people are asking, are you hiring? What's going on? I don't know about you, but I know at Yale, we've gotten so many communications, and some things we just don't know, and some things we do know. And the changes are, happening pretty regularly and pretty rapidly as new information comes in. So if you're asking kind of definitive questions, such as, are you hiring? The yes, no binary answer is probably right now, no. And at some point, the spigot's going to open up, and they're going to have opportunities to say yes again. So now is a perfect time for you to kind of keep talking with people. I've talked to a couple of people today who have continuing to move forward at very senior levels for real interviews for real jobs. And it's just kind of a matter of they're getting to that point. Their HR teams are getting to the point where they're ready to pull the trigger. And then it's just going to be a matter of when they get the approvals to do the hires. So things are still happening. So please don't think that they're not. And please, kind of keep yourself out there and talking to folks and also learning. You could show up, though, as many people are showing up. They're frustrated and they're opinionated and they're complaining about the inconveniences of having to cancel vacations and not being able to get hair appointments. And, we're all in it together. It's the same for all of us. So really, again, think about how you want people to come away from an interaction with you. What do you want them to know about you? How do you want them to feel in having the conversation with you? What do you want them to believe about you in terms of what you'd be able to do or how you would actually show up to the organization that you're involved with? And then finally, what is it that you'd want them to do at the end of the call, at the end of the interaction? So again, very thoughtful ideas about what wild success in the interaction could be are going to yield much different results than if you just kind of show up. So who do we want to network with? Anybody, right? Sometimes it's people you know, sometimes it's people you don't. I've made a lot of connections by reaching out to people, seeing things that they've written in LinkedIn or in the media, and acknowledging them for the impact that their writing or their webinar or whatever it was that I saw had on me and what I was going to do with that information. Folks really appreciate that kind of acknowledgement. So even if you don't have a first or second degree connection to that person, you can actually pretty much figure out how to get into those people that are really truly open to networking and extending their networks. I had a call just a couple of weeks ago from a friend of mine, and he reached out because he knows where I work. I'm at Yale. And he said, do you know people at Yale who need PPE, personal protective equipment, in healthcare? Of course I do. So I was able to connect him with somebody who's on the front lines, who's using it every day. And that person was able to connect him to the person at their hospital who is actually receiving those types of things. This contact of mine organizes the largest maker fair in Connecticut and in the Northeast, actually. And their big event, which is supposed to be happening, I believe this weekend, is canceled. So you've got a lot of people with a lot of energy and a lot of skill that want to help. He knew that I couldn't help directly, and I wasn't his target, but he knew that I was probably going to know the people that he wanted to help. And there's two intermediaries, myself and the person that I introduced him to, that made that happen. So sometimes it's just passing it along. That interest, yielded a big impact. those types of interactions are things where you don't know necessarily where they're going to go, but they're conversations worth having and exploring as well. The other thing I want to kind of just point out to you is it's not just about who you know and who the people that you're talking to know. It's about the people that they know. So sometimes the person that you're talking to, you might be in finance, and the person that you're talking to is, in the healthcare field or in sustainability or, doing something in marketing. And the role that's perfect for you is the role that their brother-in-law is looking for somebody in, or their best friend from college, or any number of other people. So it really is about thinking about how do you share of yourself, things that make it easy for people to remember and repeat, and letting them know really what you'd be excited about. So folks can say when they're having conversations with other people, oh, you should talk to that person. I can make your introduction to that person. If you are not clear about what you're looking for, again, you're not probably going to get a lot of referrals. I think about some years ago when I used to teach coaching at NYU, and I would teach life coaching to folks. I'm for all intents and purposes, I'm a life coach that happens to work with executives. I want you to be happy in what you choose to do in work and in life. And in my classes, I would ask people who were going to be your ideal clients, because people going out and coaching on their own are looking for referrals. They're looking for clients. So where are they going to come if not from your network? The folks that actually knew who they wanted to talk to and put that out there in an articulate way, in a memorable way, they had clients. They had lots of people to practice with, and they had people that were ready to, as they were still in school, start paying them. And the folks that just said, hey, I'm a life coach, they thought they were keeping the funnel wide. And a lot of people do this in business as well, in their LinkedIn profiles and such. They don't get clear about what they're really looking for. And that lack of clarity, where they think it's going to yield more, it actually yields less, because people don't know exactly what is going to be a good fit and what's not going to be a good fit. So clarity is really, really helpful for people. And even when, people would reach out to me and say, hey, I know your ideal client is this kind of person. They would say, but I have this friend and I think you'd really be helpful for them. Would you talk to them? People will still bring those things to you if they think that you could be helpful, and it may be somebody that you can introduce them to that might be even better than yourself. So be open to being a little bit more clear about what you're interested in, what you're looking for, because you're going to get a lot more response from folks. The other thing I just want to kind of point out is stay involved, communicate, putting things out on LinkedIn, sharing things is helpful for building your brand and helpful for keeping you top of mind so that people do remember you. So please don't just kind of create a resume or create a LinkedIn profile and leave it alone because your involvement with it, this goes back to connections don't equal network. You really have to activate that network by giving them, by participating them and giving them things to respond to. So how do you want to reach out to people? That's going to depend on what the conversation is. It's going to depend on your comfort with the medium. It's going to depend on your intimacy. Some people, if you think about it, when we're able to open up our homes and have guests in again, some people, when they come into your home, you just say, come in, come in. You might be on the phone or doing something else. Get yourself something out of the refrigerator. And there's some people that if they walked into your house and they went to your refrigerator and got something out of it, it would be really awkward. Same thing with your medicine chest. You have a headache, go get the Tylenol. Other people, if they're looking in there, it's kind of awkward, kind of uncomfortable. So think about what your intimacy is with a person, and your ask needs to line up with that, and the medium needs to line up with that a little bit. I will also say it's okay. And it's actually a good thing sometimes to just pick up the phone, because for those of us who are on Zoom all day long, sometimes it's just nice to sit down in a place where you don't have to actually be looking at the screen. You can look outside and, kind of look around and think about things, and just, even be in nature or whatnot, and not on the screen. So it doesn't have to be an email. Sometimes if it's a quick question, again, the phone is easier. You've gone back and forth with trying to set something on a calendar. Sometimes it's just easier to say, hey, let's take 2 minutes and get this booked, and it's done. So don't please think it always has to be an email. I'm going to send you in a little while or share with you a text that I got, which was an absolutely appropriate medium for the message that that a friend of mine reached out and shared with me. So, so we'll show you that too. So lots of, or both of these media are actually okay. I also want you to think about if you're reaching out to folks, sometimes you might reach out on LinkedIn and you don't hear anything right away. Well, that's because some people, not me, I'm on it every day, but some people don't check LinkedIn all the time. Some people, it takes them, you know, they might look at it every couple of weeks. So if you don't get a response on LinkedIn, please don't think that person's not open to talking to you. It may simply be that they didn't see the request. If you're reaching out to somebody from SOM, there's lots of other ways to figure out how to connect with people. You can look at their the SOM alumni directory. So that's a reminder for all of you to kind of make sure that your profiles are updated. And you can also check out different things. There's websites out there, Hunter, for example, that will help you to figure out what the direct email for people are in their companies. So you can reach out in those ways as well. And you can simply say, hey, this is why I'm trying to reach out to you. I've also sent you a LinkedIn request so that we might know each other before, or so that you might know a little bit more about me. That's also a trick I'd suggest if you're going in for an interview with people. Really nice to, again, create connection and help them to understand how you are indeed part of their network in a way that is safe for them and open, where they might open up more to connecting with you. Reaching out and connecting with them on LinkedIn so that you might know each other a little bit better before the meeting is a beautiful way to kind of go in and peek and say, oh, here's who they know, here's who I know, here's my stories about those people, so that in the interview you can actually have some conversations about those mutual connections and relationships. All of that said, we are spending a lot of time on Zoom right now. So let's talk about Zoom, because if you're making a first impression on Zoom, I want it to be a great one. I will also say that how you set up a Zoom conversation may not be how your house is set up normally. I am right now sitting at a table where a couple weeks ago, I sat at the same table, but on the other side of it because the lighting in the room was different. It was a different time of day and it was not quite so sunny out. So today I couldn't actually sit facing the other direction where there was kind of a more fun background because it was just too bright and I would have shown up as, you know, kind of a shadow, and that wouldn't have been as fun for you as the participant in the webinar. You want to think about making this a fun experience for the person who's actually engaging with you. So again, they're willing to actually have another conversation with you in the future if it makes sense to do so. So set the stage in front of you and behind you. Check your sound and your speakers. Adjust your lighting. Again, I mentioned time of day matters. You want to actually have, if you don't have natural light, I've got a couple of skylights and a bunch of windows around me. If you don't, you want to have a light, a lamp. You could pick it up and put it, I'm on my dining room table, I would put it right behind my screen so that my face would be illuminated and there wouldn't be a lot of shadows on me. Know where to look. Camera angle matters. My computer screen is actually, on my laptop, it's actually stacked up on 4 books because I wanted to bring the eye level of the camera to one where I was looking at you, not down at you or up at you. I wanted to see you. I wanted to look at you. I also, this is just another silly trick, I have the video of me where I'm looking at you, and if I were talking to you as a, you know, one-on-one, I would put your image right underneath the camera. It's a totally different experience if I have the screen over here or if I have it over here where I can't see it. It's right there underneath. So there's a couple of things you can do just to, you know, as best practices in Zoom so that you present really, really powerfully. The other thing I just want to talk about troubleshooting. I have a 13-year-old. He was not happy with me this morning when I told him he was not allowed to be online between 11:45 and 1 because I had this webinar. I want to make sure that my feed out to you is clean and there's not a lot of potential issues, as we all have experienced along the way in our new virtual world. So, so think about that proximity. I'm normally in my office. I am actually right next to where the input to the cable and the wireless box is, again, to reduce the possibility of there being issues like that. So those are just a couple of a couple of hints in terms of how to make a really great first impression with Zoom. Hopefully you're finding that helpful. Best practices. I do want you to share generously. I do want you to allow for connection by sharing something of yourself that you think might be resonant to the people that you're talking to. I do want you to know your place in terms of what your status is with that person in terms of relationship. I don't want you to get too personal. I don't want you to lead with need when you're showing up as needy and I want, and not so interested in how can this be a mutually beneficial relationship. It's not so palatable. And I want you to, kind of really think about how you want them to remember you, and please let it not be that you're focusing on the negative and you're complaining about our current situations, because honest to goodness, most of us are dealing with nothing worse than first world problems. And there's a lot of challenges out there in the world. So to the extent that you can have folks remember you in a positive light, it's somebody that they'd want to invite into their world and spend time with on a daily basis, that's a really good thing. If you wouldn't meet them in your jammies in person, please get dressed for your interview or for your conversation. Again, think about who you're talking to and what is it easy for them to say yes to. In what ways can I establish some trust and intimacy with them where they are willing to spend a little bit more time with me in the future? And also thinking about what they're able to say yes to. Or can you hire me? Are there any jobs at your company? If they don't know you, that's kind of like asking for a marriage proposal on a first date. It's a little too soon to kind of dive in. So you want to think about what are the small steps that you take to get to the bigger yeses down the line. Show up as helpful, show up as people they want to be affiliated with or associated with. And again, think about what are some of the things that people have done to you where they've shown up really, kind of self-involved and needy and desperate. And make those notes to make sure that you're for sure not doing those things. My number one suggestion for you, again, I said this earlier today, and it's so important for establishing connection. Do please check in and ask, how are you? And pause and wait for the answer and give them a chance. If you don't know people well, they may not be willing to share a lot, but again, giving them the space to do that is a beautiful thing. And I think all of us need to know that people are thinking about us and care if we choose to speak. I talked to somebody a couple of weeks ago who was self-isolating by themselves. And again, that's really, really hard. I have, kind of people that I'm sharing space with, and that's a beautiful thing. Can be frustrating too sometimes, but it's for the most part a beautiful thing. I'm not totally by myself. Imagine yourself if you didn't have, kind of an outside that you could get to and safely and nobody to talk to. So give them a chance to check in. Now I'm going to bring you down to some resources. And I also want to ask Kayla, if you don't mind, could you launch the second poll? Hopefully this has given you guys some inspiration here today. The resources I've listed here, I just said some SOM resources. I want you to think beyond these resources. Look at LinkedIn groups. Think about all of Yale. This is just SOM. Please think about your undergraduate college or university, other people that you would have interest in, prior companies, people that you might be in the same types of LinkedIn interest groups with. So there's lots of people that are out there that you can actually have conversations with. And some of it might simply be, what's going on where you are? So I'm blessed with being able to talk to SOM alumni from around the world. So I have an idea of what it looks like in Barcelona or London or Paris or Seattle, or, and there's some really good things and good stories and even hiring happening. When Seattle was such a hotbed here in the United States a couple of weeks ago, I had talked to somebody who had competing offers, and we were talking about negotiation for a job in that market. So the world hasn't stopped, and there's a lot of people that you can simply check in with because you know them and it's been a little while since you talked to them last. I am absolutely delighted to see that the question following the session, do you plan to network more or less or the same as you did previously? 85% of you are saying that you are interested in doing a bit more. So I'm really happy about that, and hopefully have some new tools to do that. So let's move on to the next. In terms of the resources here, the number one resource on this page, I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already. It's also listed on the careers page on the SOM alumni portal. This course is a $100 course, which is free with this link. So please make sure that you click on this link so that you actually get the course for free. I took it a year ago or so, and I learned things, and I use LinkedIn all the time, and I have a not bad profile. There were things about the AI, how it works, how recruiters use it, things about the university tool that I wasn't actually really aware of, and that's why I wanted to call out that alumni tool. Within LinkedIn, you can log into the School of Management and then see who's attended there. And you'll find that there's more people there than there are listed on our alumni directory page. That's because there are people like me who are staff that are listed on that page. And there's also people that have attended some of our executive education courses that are as excited about Yale as those that have gone full time. And they would be as happy to talk to you and to connect with you as anybody else. So you can actually start to use some of these tools together. So you could kind of figure out who might have common interests on LinkedIn, what companies are they at, where did they come from, how did they get to where they are today, and then you can go back over to the SOM alumni portal and check out the directory. And there you have their direct email address. So where if you've not connected with them yet, you wouldn't necessarily have that contact detail on LinkedIn. There's other ways to get it. So you can use these tools kind of in concert. Think about the SOM alumni group. The link is here. It's actually a hidden group, so you need to know where to find it. Easy to find it though, because it's all over the SOM alumni portal, and it's in every alumni newsletter that goes out if you read them. And oh, by the way, I always have some job opportunities listed at the bottom of the alumni newsletter. So if you don't sometimes get all the way to the bottom of it, check it out, because there's still, even today, a lot of open positions for working professionals. And then, I mentioned this earlier, please make sure that your alumni directory posting is accurate and up to date. I talked to an alum of SOM who also happens to work at SOM a couple of months ago, and I pointed out that the profile was actually not up to date. So useful for us to lead by example by doing those types of things. So couple of thoughts there to get you started in thinking about what resources do you have. The other thing I wanted to say is I talked to somebody about the alumni tool, and they had an interest in a particular company. In the few minutes that we spent time in a coaching conversation, and they shared with me that they were trying to do this, they said they didn't know anybody. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I had peeked at their LinkedIn profile, and I knew where they went to undergrad, and I jumped into the LinkedIn alumni tools for both their undergraduate institution and SOM, and I found 2 people that went to both schools that worked at the company they were interested in. And if that were you, would you not say yes to that person if they reached out with a thoughtful introduction? That's kind of a shoo-in for getting into a conversation with somebody. Couple that with the alumni directory direct email, and it makes it pretty easy for you to get their attention. So a couple of questions have started to come in. Now is the time that I'd love you to kind of share more. I'll start to peek through the questions a little bit more. I tried to focus on you and not reading the questions while we were in the body of the content. And Kayla, would you launch the third and final poll, if you don't mind? So you can ask a question today. The other thing that you can do, though, and I mentioned this before, you can have a conversation with me one-on-one. We can do it by Zoom. We can do it by phone. Sadly, we can't do it in person right now. But you make the appointment with me, and you do that again on the alumni portal. If you look across the top of the portal, the top says directory. Right next to that is career. If you haven't looked at that page in a little while, I want to encourage you to do that. And I would like for you also to, kind of peek at the video that's just underneath the that's kind of front and center on the page. That was me a year ago, talking to mostly a bunch of our EMBA students at the time, and then there's an alum in there as well who shared some of his experience in working with me. Gives you an idea of what a one-on-one conversation could look like. And you don't have to have all the answers when you come to the conversation. So I just want to kind of point that out too. So if you're coming with questions and hypothesis that's not maybe even fully formed, you're welcome to come to me with that as well. Delighted to see again, do you plan to spend more, less, or the same time preparing for networking interactions? 78% of you are saying more. So I'm and that's what it looks like when your wireless goes down. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. Kayla, am I online again?
Yep, you're back.
Yay, sorry about that. So that's actually a really wonderful thing to share with you guys, is that happens sometimes and you can actually handle it gracefully or not. So let me get back to my screen share here. That was fun. Did you guys enjoy that? I sure did. Kayla, you need to pop up my screen sharing again, if you don't mind. We'll get to that in just a second. Let me start peeking at these Q&A. I am not seeing, okay, here we go. Okay, so my Q&A cleared. So I apologize if you had a question in there.
Here, Cindy, let me field a few of them for you. Would that be helpful?
Super. That'd be great. Awesome, Kayla. Thank you.
Sure. So Amber had a question. What are examples of the types of offers to help you can make that return the favor of someone's time, given that you want to be helpful to the person who agreed to speak with you?
Awesome. Okay. Examples of the types of offers to help you can make. You know, it could be anything. I talked to somebody, this is some years ago, when I was doing a lot more commuting into New York, and there was this young person who didn't have apparently a lot to offer to the individual that she wanted to talk to. And I pointed out in talking with her, because she was very kind of, you know, hesitant to reach out and say hello. I shared that the topic that we were engaged with was about helping a population that this young person actually volunteered to help every single weekend, teaching a skill. So that was kind of a really neat thing. And I, you know, kind of didn't know the speaker, but walked up to the front of the line and said, you know what, you've got a lot of people to talk to here today, and this young person has a lot in common with you, and I want to make sure that the two of you connect later. And both people reached back to me afterwards and talked about what a great connection it was. So it could be something, if you have, if you're a younger alum and you're talking to an older alum, it could simply be sharing with them something about your more recent experience at SOM. It could be something personal. I know that people that have children that are looking for internships or looking to kind of learn more about different careers that others might not be in. That's another thing too. So there's lots of different types of offers to help, or even articles. I'm talking to somebody who is an alum who's interacting with a very high level individual who's managing a lot, and he's grateful for the time that that person is spending with them. They may not see all the articles that he has the time to read. So he's offered to, and the person has graciously accepted and thanked them for sharing those articles. And when you send them forward, you can share what you shared, why you're sharing what you shared, what made you think of them, and what you found most useful. So those are just a couple of simple examples. I see another question here. Hopefully that answered that question. I'm super happy with my job right now at the moment, but and I don't need help, but what do you think about networking without a plan? In the vein of, it's been a while, let's catch up, or we have a lot of connections, let's connect. I'll tell you that one of my very best friends is somebody who reached out to me, probably 15 years ago. And we were both teaching at New York University. We had both worked in public accounting. We had both worked at Pepsi. And there were a bunch of different things we had in common. And she said, I don't know why it is we don't know each other. And here we are 15 years later. And on that simple LinkedIn introduction that, hey, we've got a lot in common, we are dear friends and have made lots of referrals personally and professionally back and forth to one another. So absolutely connect with those folks. And there's lots of different ways to do that. So especially in this time, right? It's been a while. You've crossed my mind. I'm curious, how are you? How is your family doing? People, again, especially those who are stuck in a box with, 4 walls and the same faces all the time, to hear a conversation and think about life outside of this little piece that you get to pay attention to every day is a gift for a lot of people. The other thing is, you might be super happy with your job today, and then something happens tomorrow, and all of a sudden it's not there, or things change that we can't predict, kind of like global pandemics. So keeping that network active is really useful, because the other thing I'll tell you is, when I got this job, I wasn't actually looking for a job. I was, in fact, really happy doing what I was doing, which was working from home, and I had my own private coaching practice. And one of my dear friends, who isn't a coach, who has nothing to do with my particular career path, knew about this job at SOM and referred me in. And 6 weeks later, I was here, and I love it. I'm so grateful to be able to kind of engage with this population the way I get to. And that wouldn't have come if my network didn't know who I was and I hadn't kind of stayed involved with them personally and or professionally. So hopefully, kind of this new networking approach applies for everybody kind of equally here. I'm curious, Kayla, do you see?
Yeah. Yeah. There was a question from Jeffrey. He says, how do you manage the so-and-so hasn't gotten back to me issue? It's hard to balance when they missed it. Are they busy with when they really aren't interested? Any advice on how often to reach out and when?
Sure. What I would say on that one, and I'm trying to share my screen, there we go. What I would say on that one is you want to give it a little bit of time. You want to maybe reach out in a different way. And you might actually even share something new. So, whoops, I advanced it and I didn't mean to do that because I was moving my screen. Did you guys see that? It was over, my video was over here when I started to share, and I just moved it so I could look at you again. A few minutes ago, it was a little bit lower and you were seeing my eyelids more. So that's my Zoom tutorial, live action tutorial. Give it a little bit of time, and then reach back, maybe share something else that you saw that that you think that person might appreciate. You might try another approach. It might be that you reach directly to somebody and they didn't respond right away. You might see who else you have in common. The other thing I'd say is, there's a lot of information on the internet right now. You can actually figure out if maybe they're busy. Maybe something's going on with them. And, the other thing, and hopefully this is not the issue for people and not the reason why they're not getting back, people are sick. People are, kind of on the front lines of different things, and just, they don't have the time right now. So, you might try again. If you've, haven't had luck connecting with somebody, feel free to reach out for a coaching appointment, and we can talk about, I had a conversation with somebody the other day who said, people never get back to me. I don't know why. I've got this great resume, but I can't, I don't seem to be employable. Nobody wants to talk to me. it might not be that you're not employable. It might just be that you haven't actually come up with that right story. You haven't kind of translated it into language that's resonant to that person yet. So it could be a little bit in the what you're asking or how you're asking it that you're not yet adjusted to something that they're excited to and willing to say yes to. So hopefully that answers that one. Kayla, do you see any others in there?
Yes, someone asked, in terms of clarity, how would you approach clearly articulating the culture you're looking for as more important than the industry, role, etc.? If your top priorities are a great manager, team, company known for flat structures and encouraging all ideas.
Cool. So the way I like to think about looking for jobs and thinking about culture and such is the skills that are needed for the job and the outcomes that are needed for the job are kind of table stakes. So if you're applying for a role and you know, how to unpack a job description and how to kind of apply for a job description and really put that story together that people are going to be excited about is a topic of a whole different conversation, hopefully that we'll have in a few months' time. What I want you to think about in terms of the culture piece is to let people know how you know yourself to be able to thrive best, and asking questions. And this is as important on your behalf as you're sharing your experience and skills with folks as it is in the questions you ask the people that you're talking to. You want to ask questions where they get to show you that they actually show up that way on a regular basis. So if you want to let them know and you want to, you know, kind of form a hypothesis, it seems that this company is one in which I would thrive, right? And I've done my research, and you know, the characteristics that you're looking for are those that, you know, kind of you just mentioned in the question. And I'm curious, I just want to kind of understand, having worked there, is this your experience? Can you tell me about how this is for you? And, you know, kind of that's a place to explore. Or, you know, sometimes reaching out to people that know you well and asking them, this is another quick story I can share with you. This is how I became a coach. Most of us at some point in our careers have gotten caught up in some kind of a reorganization or restructuring, and that's true of me too. My career before becoming a coach, my undergrad is in accounting and my MBA is in finance and marketing. I spent a lot of time doing a lot of things that weren't coaching. Coaching has always kind of been a part of what I do in terms of development of people and hiring and training, all the way through even from college when I was an RA, but it wasn't what I'd focused on. And when I found myself at a crossroads and, you know, without a business card for the first time since I actually left college, I asked a couple people, if I weren't doing this, which at that point was operational finance, what do you think I should be doing? What do you see me doing? And that was when a couple people said, hey, you should be a coach. And I looked at them quizzically and I said, I'm athletic. What sport? They saw something in me that I didn't see. So, you know, putting it out there to your network and saying, the types of companies I thrive in are companies that have these types of characteristics. Other people might share with you ideas about companies that you hadn't even thought about. So I do think culture is really important. I do think that, you know, kind of your ability to do the job is table stakes in a lot of instances. And it's really kind of how you will accrete to the culture or how you'll bring new energy into the organization are things that people would be really most excited about. I'm looking at, is there a database or a way to identify companies with good cultures, company culture? You know, I'm not sure about that. You know, I think, you know, that's something I'll look into. And if there's something I'll see if I can find it and maybe share it on the SOM alumni LinkedIn page. A lot of searches do start with industry, which is part of the question that's come through. There are a lot of people, though, who have these transformational skills that are able to be leveraged across industries. So it's really more about the impact that you're going to have within the company. So again, if you can be clear about the types of questions you ask, the types of ambiguity or complexity that you've dealt with, and draw the parallels from where you were, and this is, again, where story is really important, to where you'd like to go, that's a big deal. So I'll look into, as a follow-up, I'll look into seeing if I can find anything there. And if I do, I'll share that over on the LinkedIn, the alumni and student page. And you're welcome. I just saw somebody say thank you. Last page I wanted to share with you guys before we wrap up. And thank you so much for being so interactive today, because that's really where, a lot of the growth and learning comes, is thinking about how you're going to take this information and apply it to yourselves. You matter, and people care about you, and people will be excited to hear about you. This is a text message that I got on Saturday, and it came from my friend Billy, and Billy and I worked with each other at Deloitte and Touche back in the time when it was called Deloitte and Touche. It was the year of the merger of Deloitte Haskins and Sells and Touche Ross back in 1990. And Billy shared this keychain, and I don't understand or believe that he still has a keychain, and I'm not even sure. I'm going to have to check with him where we were when he made that, with my friend Jen and our friend Doug, and we all worked together at Deloitte. And he just said, "Hey, how you doing?" Now, I've talked to him since then. I haven't actually physically seen him since 1995, but oh my gosh, how that felt when I got that text, because he's curious and he cares. So you might not know what to say, and you might just be checking in because you care. Check in anyway, reach out, say thank you, let them know what made you think of them, and be well. So I think we've wrapped up with all the questions. I'm not sure that I see anything else out there. But I, again, just want to say thank you so much for being part of this community. Thank you for being open to sharing with people that might reach out to you. Thank you for thinking about who might not have thought to reach out to you, and offering, just checking in and saying, is there anything you need? Are you alone? Is there anything that I can do for you? Those are, wonderful reasons to reach out to people. And if you want to check in with me because you want to kind of turbocharge your own networking strategies here, I would be absolutely delighted to meet you. So reach out through the alumni portal on the careers website on the alumni portal, and book an appointment. And I look forward to having a conversation with you one-on-one. Thanks so much, Kayla, for organizing this for all of us. And thank you to all of you. And, please stay at home, stay safe, and keep in touch.